The Suns didn't trade Kevin Durant just because of basketball. They traded him because the balance sheet said they had to. That's the real reason Phoenix sent a 15-time All-Star to Houston, and the receipts live in the cap table, the second apron penalties, and the final year of a $194.2 million contract. Per ESPN on June 22, 2025, Phoenix moved Durant to the Rockets for Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, the number 10 pick in the draft, and 5 seconds. That's your headline. But the story underneath is a hard pivot from star chasing to financial survival, triggered by one number, 54.7, Durant's 2025-26 salary in the last year of that deal. Most people think Phoenix just wanted to get younger, reshape the locker room, or quit the super team experiment. That's the surface narrative. Others guess it was about on-court fit, or that Houston simply overpaid. The common belief is that this was a basketball trade. It wasn't. The superior reality is that Phoenix had run headfirst into the NBA's new cap environment: second apron handcuffs, frozen picks, no mid-level, no aggregation, and the bill from 2 years of record spending was coming due. The Durant trade wasn't an aesthetic choice. It was a pressure release. Here's the plan. We're going to answer 3 questions. What did Phoenix actually buy with this trade? Because it wasn't just Jalen Green and a mid-lottery pick. Why did the final year of Durant's $194.2 million contract force the timing? And how did the new CBA second apron rules turn Houston into the one bidder that could meet Phoenix's needs? Along the way, we'll use receipts, ESPN's deal terms from June 22nd, the final year's salary figure reported when the trade became official in early July, the second apron penalties laid out after the 2023 CBA, and Phoenix's own post-trade apron status. I pulled the L numbers, checked the cap math, and mapped the timeline so you don't have to. Let's start here. If the Suns were going to move Durant, they had to do it before the new league year hardened their options further. Rehook. So what changed in late June that didn't exist at the deadline? The second apron vice tightened the moment you looked at Phoenix's path into July. Per widely reported figures, going into the summer, the Suns were bracing for a 4th straight tax year with a projection well over the second apron. Under the 2023 CBA, living above that line doesn't just cost money, it costs flex. You can't aggregate salaries in trades. You can't take back more money than you send out. You lose the mid-level exception. And if you stay above the second apron 3 out of 5 years, your first-round pick 7 years out gets pushed to the back of the round. That last part is the nuclear penalty, which means every decision you make in June isn't about vibes. It's about avoiding a slow-motion draft pick punishment that can haunt your roster construction for the better part of a decade. The payout. By moving Durant before July's business window, Phoenix wasn't chasing vibes. They were buying time against the clock on a future first-round pick and escaping the vice that turns stars into immovable anchors. Now the shocker. The biggest prize Phoenix acquired wasn't a player, it was permission. Rehook. What did trading Durant actually unlock? Without Durant's $54.7 million on the books for 2025-26, Phoenix could plausibly slide under the first apron instead of living above the second. That distinction is everything. Under the first apron, you can use the non-taxpayer mid-level to actually add a rotation player instead of picking through minimums. You can combine smaller salaries to make a sensible trade instead of playing one-for-one Tetris. You can use normal cap tools most teams take for granted. Phoenix's past 2 seasons told them what life looks like without those tools. Record payrolls, a barren exception cupboard, buyout markets you can't shop, and a roster that can't reshape around the edges. By shedding Durant's final year money, Phoenix bought governance. They bought the right to act like a normal franchise again. That's not romantic, but it is how you build a sustainable team. The payout. The assets weren't just Green and a pick. The true asset was crossing back under the line that lets you do business in the NBA. Let's talk about the package, because it's not window dressing. It's the second-order effect of a financial decision. Rehook. Did Phoenix settle for less than a traditional superstar return? On paper, they got a scoring guard in Jalen Green, a defensive wing in Dillon Brooks, the number 10 pick in the 2025 draft, and 5 second-rounders. That's not the Gobert haul, or the Mitchell haul, but it's not supposed to be. When the star's on an expiring figure north of $50 million and your team is handcuffed by apron penalties, you're not fishing in the same pond. You're looking for a starter-level salary that can be moved again, a controllable rookie-scale player you can actually develop, and a path to rebalance your books. The rookie-scale deal attached to a top 10 pick matters more in an apron world than a late first plus a swap ever did, because you need cheap upside to offset your max slots. And the seconds, yes, 5 of them, are the new grease in a league that has limited cash in trades and tighter rules around exceptions. Their flexibility, the payout, the return looks modest only if you forget what Phoenix was selling. They weren't selling prime window Durant with years of control. They were selling $54.7 million of expiring salary plus risk, and they converted it into options. Why the timing? Because the final year of Durant's 4-year, $194.2 million extension wasn't just expensive, it was leverage. Rehook, how does a 1-year, $54.7 million tag change the trade calculus? If Durant had committed to an immediate extension in Phoenix, you could argue for riding it out and reshuffling around the margins. But there was no on-record commitment in June, and the CBA changed the risk profile of waiting. An expiring max can walk for nothing, or force you to salary match him at the deadline in deals that bring back more money than you want when you're already bound by apron constraints. Worse, if you carry that expiring into the season and struggle, the whole league knows you're desperate by February. That's a buyer's market. By trading in June, Phoenix captured value while it still existed and signaled to the league and to their own books that they were reducing exposure to an expiring at the very top of the cap pyramid. The payout, the last year didn't just push Phoenix toward a decision, it set the deadline. Either you pay the bill and the penalties, or you pull the ripcord before the season starts. Now flip the lens. Why Houston? Rehook. How did the CBA turn the Rockets into the most logical landing spot? Because Houston had 3 things Phoenix needed in this market. Mid-salaries they could send without aggregation gymnastics, a ready-made headliner in Jalen Green, who's still on the right side of age and cost, and pick capital they could part with without imploding their own future. Their books could absorb Durant's salary and still manage tax exposure in the short term, and their timeline demanded a credibility jolt. Houston's young core, Amen Thompson, Alperen Sengun, Jabari Smith Jr., needed a force multiplier who bends playoff games tomorrow, not a prospect who might. They could eat a luxury tax season and even set themselves up to negotiate a short extension with Durant rather than being trapped by a 5-year max. In a league where a dozen teams can't add money and another half dozen won't, the Rockets' combination of assets and appetite narrowed the marketplace to a handful of real bidders. The payout. Houston wasn't just willing, they were structurally able. In the second apron era, that's rare. Let's drop pins on the timeline, because the receipts tell you how pre-planned this was. Rehook. Was this really a sudden blockbuster? Phoenix's spending spree and apron status were public math. Over 2 seasons, the Suns led the league in payroll and luxury tax, and analysts tallied a combined outlay that dwarfed the field. The league had already made clear that second apron teams were losing tools and risking a future first-round pick getting shoved to the back of the line if they stayed above the line 3 out of 5 years. Those aren't abstract ideas, they're hard constraints. By mid-June, reports surfaced that Phoenix was exploring Durant options across multiple teams, including Houston. On June 22nd, ESPN reported the agreement. Durant to the Rockets for Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, the number 10 pick in multiples of seconds. By July 6th, with the moratorium lifted, the trade became official as part of a complex multi-team ledger of moves around the league's New Year business. The payout. This wasn't panic, it was a calendar play. The Suns circled late June, executed, and used July's window to formalize the exit while rebalancing their books. Now there's an easy counter. If you're going to move Durant, why not hold out for a Godfather offer? Rehook. Did Phoenix leave value on the table? In a pre-apron world, maybe. In 2020, a star like Durant on an expiring could open a bidding war. In 2025, half the contenders can't add meaningful salary without tripping hard caps, losing the mid-level, or freezing a pick 7 years out. Add in the fact that Phoenix couldn't take back $1 more than it sent and couldn't package smaller contracts to craft a supersized return, and your auction narrows to teams with the right mid-tier money, the right picks, and the right stomach for a 37-year-old's extension talk. Houston fits that Venn diagram. Miami, Minnesota, New York, San Antonio. Interest is one thing, The ability to legally and sensibly transact under apron rules is another. The payout. The deal Phoenix got is what a Durant-level expiring returns when the rulebook has been rewritten against you. Let's talk on court for a beat, because Phoenix didn't ignore the basketball. Rehook. How do Green and Brooks fit what the Suns want to be? Green brings a downhill gear Phoenix lacked, plus the scoring gravity to keep Devin Booker from seeing two bodies every touch. He's not a finished product, but he's a movable, controllable asset with all-star flashes. Brooks gives you a credible wing defender who can take the toughest forward every night, something Phoenix had to manufacture over the last 2 seasons. And the number 10 pick isn't just a bet on upside. It's a financial instrument. 4 years of cost control on a rotation-capable body with team options that scale predictably. In an apron league, those rookie-scale spots are your oxygen. The payout. Even if the Suns flip one or both veterans later, they've diversified their portfolio. Star cap slot out, multiple tradable contracts in, plus a rookie they can grow or use in the next deal. Another pressure point, extensions. Rehook. What did Durant's extension option mean for Phoenix? By rule, once the new league year opened in July, Durant would be eligible to add years on top of his final season. That's leverage for the player and a fork in the road for the team. If Phoenix extends him, they commit huge dollars deep into his late 30s while already carrying Booker at the top of the cap and trying to recover flexibility. If they wait, they risk a mid-season leverage play or a summer exit for nothing. If they trade, they let the acquiring team negotiate the next step and capture present-tense value instead of carrying the risk themselves. The payout. Phoenix didn't just dodge a 2026 free agency cliff, they offloaded the extension dilemma entirely. Hidden cost you don't see on a box score opportunity. Rehook. What do the Suns get back beyond the names? The right to use the non-taxpayer mid-level to plug a playoff hole without a taxpayer-only search. The ability to combine contracts to chase a center, a point of attack stopper, or simply rebalance if year one of the retool reveals a mismatch. The re-entry into the normal buyout market and into the everyday economy of NBA trade mechanics, instead of living in a gated community where every move has to be a star swing. That's how you build a team that can absorb injuries, survive cold shooting weeks, and evolve over 82 games. The payout. Phoenix moved from a rigid, brittle roster model to a modular one, and the Durant trade is the hinge that made it possible. Let's also acknowledge the human. Rehook. Was Durant blindsided? He said he was upset by the late-season chatter that Phoenix had put him on the market, and that he blocked a different route earlier in the year. That matters because it tells you the relationship calculus. If the trust is wobbling and the money is massive, front offices choose certainty. Houston gave him a win-now stage, a young core that benefits from his gravity right away, and a market that will treat every 30-point night like a parade. Phoenix gave itself a chance to breathe. The payout. Both sides got what their timelines demanded, even if the headlines framed it as shock. So what's the answer to our 3 questions? What did Phoenix actually buy? Flexibility, cap, picks, and permission to use tools they'd lost in the second apron maze. Why did the final year matter? Because a $54.7 million expiring at the very top of your sheet either becomes an extension commitment you can't absorb or a February liability you can't extract value from. How did the CBA shape the destination? By shrinking the circle of legal, realistic buyers until a team like Houston, with matching money, draft ammo, and a reason to win right now, emerged as the obvious partner. Here's the bottom line. The Suns traded Kevin Durant because the modern NBA punishes inflexibility more than it rewards star hoarding. The receipts say it plain: record spending, second apron shackles, a looming pick penalty, and an expiring max that would define your next 12 months. They turned one giant problem into a handful of solvable ones: mid-tier contracts you can move, a rookie you can develop, and cap mechanics you can finally use again. That's not a surrender, it's a reset. And for Phoenix, it might be the only path back to relevance without collateral damage to the next half-decade of drafts.